So let's talk about 10 things that you should stop doing if you struggle with anxiety. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Vanessa Milagros, and I'm a licensed mental health professional. On this channel, I make videos all about different mental health topics and relationships, attachment styles, and anxiety. You get the picture. So if you're interested in topics like that, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and comment any questions or comments that you have down below. Let's get started. The first thing you should stop doing if you have anxiety is to stop running away from things that intimidate you or scare you. And this is important to understand because avoiding difficult situations or uncomfortable situations, it tells your brain, yep, this is dangerous, stay away, which makes your anxiety even louder, even stronger. The more you avoid, the scarier it becomes. Now, each situation is different, and I cannot say what situation you should avoid and shouldn't avoid. This is why, if you're struggling with anxiety, it's really important to have support in the form of therapy or mentorship or someone else that can kindly keep you accountable for different things and walk with you on that journey. So yes, each situation is different. However, the more you allow the fear and the thing that you fear the most to control your actions, your behavior, your life, the less autonomy you have to say, you know what? This is scary. This does bring me anxiety. But if it's stopping me from doing something that I need to do for maybe my family, maybe the anxiety is blocking you from being there in certain situations with your loved ones, that's not fair for you in your life and the people that you love that want you there, right? So it's up to you to work on how do I get through this so that I don't allow that anxiety to completely impact and overwhelm my life. Now listen, I know that I'm breaking these down into 10 simple things to just stop doing. I don't necessarily mean, oh yeah, it's super easy, just stop doing this. Without support, without outside resources, without you working on these things consistently, it's not going to happen for you right away the first few times that you do it. These are things that you have to put into place consistently over time, but you don't have to do this journey on your own. The second thing you should stop or avoid doing if you have anxiety is to stop catastrophizing. What is catastrophizing? Catastrophizing, in very simple terms, is just imagining the worst case scenario happening. This triggers your stress responses unnecessarily because there's no active threat physically, factually going on in that present moment when you're catastrophizing. In other words, you're making things a bigger deal than they actively presently are. Has anybody done that? I know I have. I'm sure a lot of you watching have. This is something that you definitely want to try to avoid or to switch gears if you find yourself doing this. It's easier to switch gears when you catch it earlier on. When you're in the middle of it, you can still do so, but it becomes that much more difficult. And the reason why you really want to stay away from this is because if you struggle with anxiety, that cognitive distortion, that's common and it makes the anxiety worse for you. So instead, I want you to practice something that we call cognitive restructuring in therapy terms. Essentially, it is when you practice pausing in the moment and asking yourself a few important questions to analyze what is actually going on and not just going blindly with what your mind is imagining up. For instance, here are some questions that you can ask yourself in the moment, or right before the catastrophizing starts to level up, right? 1, what is the evidence for these thoughts or this thought that I'm having? Where's the proof? Where are the facts? Not just what I feel like, or I think that, or I predict that. No, we want to leave those out the door. What is the actual evidence for this thought? And I want you to ask yourself, okay, what is a more balanced perspective, right? So I don't want you to go from, this is just the worst thing that could ever happen. I don't want you to go from there to, everything is beautiful and fine and butterflies and perfect. I don't want you to do that. That's unrealistic. However, what I want you to do is to find a more middle balanced approach. Let's meet in the middle a little bit. So maybe it's not all terrible, right? Maybe could it be that it may not be as bad as you imagine it to be? And I know you're probably like, oh, that's not going to work. Walk with me. Stay with me. I want you to think of a time right now where you were very anxious or stressed or even scared about something that was upcoming for you. It was actually about to happen. And then after it was done, you were like, oh, it actually wasn't that bad. Or I don't know why I spent so much time worrying about that thing. It really wasn't half as bad as what I thought. I'm sure you've had those moments in your life. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us that factually, there are moments where we, in our minds, can run with it. And listen, we can all be creative. Even the least creative of all can be very creative when it comes to catastrophizing and anxiety and stress. We can come up with 10,000 different scenarios. Is it a protective barrier? Is it a protective factor for a lot of us? Yes, I want to know every possible outcome and how terrible it can be. That way, if it happens, I'm prepared. No sweat. I already thought this was coming. I got it. Now, evidence does show that that actually doesn't help when it comes to anxiety, but we'll leave that for another video. So whenever you're able to say, you know what is the evidence for this? And also, where can I meet in the middle? Where can I understand that maybe it's not as catastrophic as I thought it was going to be, and it's not rainbows and butterflies either, but where's the middle line here? Where can I draw that line in order to help me reduce my inner turmoil, my inner stress, my anxiety, to calm my nerves? You're doing it to help you. Number 3, I will ask you, if you want to, you don't have to. These are all just recommendations. However, it would be a great idea to stop Googling. You're going to have to put down Google. Now, it's important to research certain symptoms that you're feeling. It's important to educate yourself. Please continue to do that. However, when you Google, certain symptoms, certain diagnoses come up, and you are checking things off like, yeah, I have this, yeah, I have this, yeah, I have this. There's no real testing being done. There's no real assessments being done in order to back this up. And so the problem is that we can go into a rabbit hole of different diagnoses. It can create a false reality of what you think is actually happening to you or with you, and that's not actually the case. It can increase your anxiety because of that. It can increase your stress levels, and you're not helping the situation. You're not finding solutions that are actually yours, that you know without a shadow of a doubt. You're just creating a sense of overwhelm for you, and it's not going to help. So instead, if you're like, listen, I'm not putting Google down, there's nothing you can say, that's fine. However, I want you to do something in addition to that. So in addition to that, I want you to also follow up with a medical professional or a mental health professional. It depends on your specific situation. Have more supporting evidence for what you believe your diagnosis is. Let's jump to number 4. Stop neglecting your physical health. Everybody has a different starting point. Everybody has different situations and circumstances. So we have to make room for that. However, anything that's going to help with your physical health, and this includes, yes, exercise, yes, eating healthier, yes, all of that, but inclusive of things like sleep, which we take for granted, taking time for yourself. A lot of the reasons why we have physical health problems is in line with how we neglect ourselves and our needs. If you are the type of person that puts everybody else's needs before yours, I can almost guarantee you that you are also neglecting your physical health, in addition to your mental health. So making sure that you're doing what's best for you based on your specific situation and not putting more pressure on you than the world is already putting on you, that's where I want you to start. Baby steps, consistent steps. Number 5. Stop saying yes to everything. And the reason why I bring this up is because those of us who struggle with anxiety also tend to struggle with people-pleasing tendencies. And if that is you, raise your hand. There is no judgment here. Okay, now you recognize that that is you. However, what you have to do more of is reduce the people-pleasing tendencies, which means you're going to have to practice not saying yes to people as often as you do, and also working through the feelings of guilt or shame or fear of disappointing others that are going to inevitably come up for you. And this is where you put the therapy to practice. This is where you put the mentorship to practice. This is where you put all the tools and things that you're learning. This is where you put it into practice. In the moment where you're asked about something and your guilt comes up and your immediate feelings of, oh my gosh, I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to look bad in their eyes. I don't want them to talk about me. I don't want them to feel like I'm blah, 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 blah. Keep it going. You know what those thoughts are. In the moment, practicing, no, I'm sorry, that's not something I can do, but thank you for inviting me. Or, no, I'm sorry, that's not something I can do. It is going to be difficult because you're going to feel like you're disappointing others. And if you have people-pleasing tendencies, that's not the vibe, ever. However, it's going to be helpful to practice this before you get into those situations to help you during that time. But not saying yes to everybody all of the time is healthy. Let me repeat it one more time. Not saying yes to everybody all of the time is healthy. Next, I want you to stop scrolling mindlessly. I know, it's very difficult sometimes. However, what we need to recognize is that scrolling on your phone for hours and hours is a form of dissociation, is a form of numbness, is a form of checking out. And while checking out is healthy at times, we don't always need to be plugged in into what's going on around us and what everybody else is doing and taking care of everybody else and our responsibilities. There does need to be time to unplug and unwind. However, if you're finding that every day you're mindlessly scrolling for hours and hours and hours, I want you to consider a few things. What are you seeing when you're scrolling for hours and hours? What are you hearing when you're scrolling for hours and hours and hours? Research shows that when we tend to scroll, this actually fuels our thoughts of comparison, so comparing yourself to others, and it also overstimulates a lot of us when we're doing that. And in turn, what does this cause? I want to hear it. Yep, you said it. More stress, more anxiety. So I want you to see, even though you may struggle with anxiety, there are other things that increase that anxiety most days. And a lot of that are things that we don't even tend to think about, such as mindless scrolling, such as not being able to say no to others. Those things fuel anxiety and increase it for a lot of us. And so, like I said, baby steps that are consistent is the key. And number 7, I hesitate before this point, but I'm just going to say it. You need to stop controlling everything. Anxiety is fueled by the illusion of control. When your life is unpredictable, trying to control every detail of your life is going to increase the mental strain, the mental load that you're placing on yourself, not just mentally, but emotionally, physically. And then you wonder why you're exhausted at the end of the day. Instead, I want you to practice recognizing, stating out loud, and acknowledging that there are things that are outside of your control. And I want you to name those things. Somebody else's actions, for instance, out of your control. Somebody else's thought process, out of your control. Somebody else's acceptance or rejection of you, out of your control. Now I want you to think about the things that are in your control. How you react, it's in your control. How you behave, it's in your control. What you tend to think about and ruminate on, that's in your control. When you separate what you can control with what you cannot control, you take your power back. You recognize, I do not have the power to control everything and everyone. And overthinking, catastrophizing over these things are not going to change them. However, what can I do to gain my autonomy, my strength, my sense of groundedness? One thing you can do is accept what is in your control and what is out of your control. And then put your mind at work and start focusing on the things that are in your control. Number 8, stop bottling up your emotions. Repressing your emotions, acting like everything is okay, like you're doing fine, like you're not hurting inside, is going to increase your anxiety and your stress. Emotional suppression only temporarily fixes the situation and the circumstances. And I say fixes because nothing is actually done except for ignoring what's actually going on, except for replacing a potential solution with, we're just going to back away slowly and act like things aren't crashing down around us. This is where you include support systems. Everybody needs somebody. It's okay to ask for help. Number 9, stop multitasking all the time. And I laugh when I say this because I am a multitasker. However, when you can recognize that your multitasking is a form of distraction, that's when you have to say, okay, tip number 9, that's for me. I need to start implementing that. If multitasking all the time is what you're doing, you are increasing your anxiety and your stress levels, and you're going to feel more overwhelmed before the day even ends. And studies actually show that humans, we're terrible at actual multitasking. And this actually leads to a decrease in efficiency and an increase in stress. So here's what I want you to do instead. I want you to try one task at a time. And that may mean that while you're doing that task and thinking about something else, you are going to have to tell yourself out loud, I am focused on this, and name the thing that you're focused on. Once I'm done with this, I will move on to the next one. If I am not done with this task, I will not move on to that task. Now, easier said than done. But when you force yourself to stay with what you're doing or not moving on at all, you have to be intentional about this, because if not, you're going to go from, and I'm sure we've all done this, okay? You're going to go from one task, get 25% done, go to the other task, get 50% done there, come back to this task, get 10 more percent done, go back to so much energy, so much mental load is exerted when you do things that way. And we think we're getting more things done. You're not. That's the fallacy behind it. You're just going to overwhelm yourself and stress yourself out even more. So where you can help it, because not everything can be that way in life, we have to be realistic. Multitask where you have to. Where you do not have to, where you can actually work on this, practice working on these skills. And number 10, stop skipping mindfulness. Mindfulness, grounding practices, all of these things are so important to help you remember that recentering yourself, grounding yourself, bringing yourself back to a state of equilibrium, this is going to be so helpful for your nervous system, for your mental health, for your emotional well-being, making sure that you take time to reset. For you, it may mean something different than for someone else, but find ways that help you to reset, whether that's in the middle of the day, when you know that's the most stressful point for you, or whether it's in the evenings, because you know that's going to be the most stressful time for you. Resetting is going to be important. Now, how you reset is going to look different from person to person. So some people use grounding techniques, some people use meditation, some people go to exercise classes, some people go to therapy to practice learning how to actually come back and recenter themselves. Some people say, you know what, I need 10 minutes. It's not a cure-all. You're not going to come out being all happy and just stress-free, but it is going to help you to remember that you are going 1,000 miles a minute and you need to slow that down. So which one of these tips have you tried and live by and just absolutely love? Which one of these tips have you not heard of but will implement into your life? If you have any other questions, comment all these things down below. Let me know. Let's get a conversation started. If you enjoyed this video, learned something from it, make sure to like and subscribe to continue to receive more notifications of future videos that I post. Thank you again for being here. Have a great day.